Bitcoin historically was a huge contributor to your returns, and I know you're still bullish on it because ARK recently published two very favorable white papers on Bitcoin. But so far as I can tell, there has been no Bitcoin in the ARK Innovation ETF for more than a year and a half. How come?
And then finally, Bitcoin. Why is Bitcoin ready for prime time? Bitcoin is ready for prime time because it's serving a huge unmet need.
We believe that the institutional behavior and moves recently have been fascinating. We have been expecting institutions to start moving into Bitcoin and other crypto assets, but primarily Bitcoin, the most secure of the blockchains, because if you look at the correlation of Bitcoin's performance relative to any other asset class, it has the lowest correlation, meaning if you buy some Bitcoin, you will further diversify your portfolio and increase your returns with lower risk, right? So that's why institutions look for that low correlation. Bitcoin has it. And so that's clear. We have 10 years of history now. But what surprised me and us generally was to watch MicroStrategy, which has put all the cash on its balance sheet into Bitcoin, and even did another equity offering so it could put more cash on its balance sheet. And I think that's a little crazy because I think the regulators will have something to say about this in terms of what is this? Is this company the MicroStrategy technology company, or is it like an ETF? So we don't know about that. But then you saw Square put 1% of all of its assets in Bitcoin. And I think you're going to see more of that. We didn't expect that. What we did expect was, because of the low correlation of returns, institutional investors to move in. The most surprising one to me thus far has been MassMutual. It put $100 million into its general account. Now, its general account is enormous. So $100 million is something like 0.001. But what that move told us is, MassMutual's very conservative and very highly regulated. And so it had to jump through many more regulatory hurdles than I thought would have been possible by now. So I think that is a seal of approval. And then, of course, you have the institutional infrastructure moving into place, whether it's with custody, and everyone knows a lot about Fidelity being out there in terms of wanting to custody Bitcoin in particular. You have the Intercontinental Exchange, and you've got the CME now with Bitcoin futures, one settling in kind, one settling in cash. And so we do believe that Bitcoin is getting ready for institutional. We have a very disciplined process. And so our minimum hurdle rate of return for a stock to enter the portfolio is 15% at a compound annual rate over 5 years. We expect the stocks in our portfolio to double over the next 5 years.
Bitcoin historically was a huge contributor to your returns, and I know you're still bullish on it because ARK recently published two very favorable white papers on Bitcoin. But so far as I can tell, there has been no Bitcoin in the ARK Innovation ETF for more than a year and a half. How come?
Yes, well, we put it in at a 1% position in 2015 when Bitcoin was $250. And we scaled with it. We didn't sell it at all. So it hit 10% of the portfolio, at which point we were forced to sell. And at the same time, there was some forking taking place. So we were getting distributions And what we learned is that Bitcoin threw off what's called unqualified income, which is not illegal, but from an IRS point of view, if our portfolios generate more than 10% of gross profits in unqualified income, which is usually commodity-like income, the IRS allows that 10% and then will confiscate the rest of it. So if we moved into a black swan event where the equity markets imploded and Bitcoin took off, our clients would be able to keep only 10% of that gain. And we just thought this was too much of a risk from a fiduciary point of view to subject our investors to. So what we did is we moved out of it in early 18, better lucky than smart, because of course we went from $20,000 down to, at the end of 17, down to below 4,000 earlier this year. In our fully discretionary portfolios, where we are not subjected to the 40 Act rules of the SEC, our Bitcoin position is about 7% right now. So that is how optimistic we are on it.
And then finally, Bitcoin. Why is Bitcoin ready for prime time? Bitcoin is ready for prime time because it's serving a huge unmet need. Now, in the US, when we were the first asset manager, the first public asset manager in, I think, the world to gain exposure to Bitcoin through the Bitcoin Investment Trust in 2015 when it was at $250. As you know, today, I think it's close to $9,000, having round trip from 20,000 to 3. So we're still in very early days. But what we're already beginning to see is it serves for low-cost remittances and for faster trade settlements. I've always wondered, as an investor, I can trade something in a millisecond and maybe thousands of milliseconds, but it still takes 2 days to settle. That doesn't make any sense. There are too many toll collectors, too many middlemen along the way. That is going to change. Australia is going to launch its blockchain solution, I think, in a year or so. It's quite delayed. But we do believe that is the way these markets are going to go. As far as remittances, we are already seeing solutions, I know, from South Korea to the Philippines. The remittance market is a $600 billion market, even though Western Union and others charge 8%, and in some cases, I've heard in Nigeria, for example, 25% to send money back home. So it's ridiculously expensive. Ultimately, what we think the Bitcoin blockchain is going to do specifically is allow for much cheaper. It's money over IP. Think voice over IP. I don't know if many of you remember, but technology futurists were saying, when my parents lived in California and I lived in New York, voice is going to be free. And I was thinking, yeah, bring it on, because it was very expensive to call. Today, I have 3 children. They're in their 20s. They cannot believe I ever paid for a phone call, right? Sounds crazy, but that was voice over IP. This is money over IP. It's going to become the free transmission of money over IP. And we do think the Bitcoin blockchain is the most secure out there and will be the biggest enabler for this. Ready for prime time. The Bitcoin blockchain last year accommodated $1.3 trillion in transactions. Now, this is not trading activity. This is transactions. The Bitcoin blockchain is completely transparent. We're pretty excited about what the Bitcoin blockchain future holds. We do believe there will only be a few cryptocurrencies. Now, right now, there are more than 2,000 crypto assets. We believe there will only be 2, 3, or 4 cryptocurrencies, much like we see now. The reserve currency today in the world is the dollar. We know now from the crash that we saw from $20,000 to $3,000, that Bitcoin's market share of the crypto asset ecosystem went from the low 30s to up to now 60. That is what happens during a flight to safety. The world reverts to the reserve currency. The reserve currency of the crypto asset ecosystem, we believe, is Bitcoin. And there will be a few more currencies, just like there are the yuan, the euro, the yen. So we do believe, and we're looking for those. But we also believe that most of the 2,000 crypto assets in the world today will be pretty worthless, because the velocity, it's back to velocity, an economic concept here. The velocity of many of them is going to be enormous, because those who are working in the crypto asset ecosystem are always going to default to the reserve currency. And we do think that will be Bitcoin.
But primarily Bitcoin, the most secure of the blockchains, that Bitcoin threw off what's called unqualified income.
Bitcoin is ready for prime time because it's serving a huge unmet need. We're pretty excited about what the Bitcoin blockchain future holds.